Hello and welcome Legionnaires to Legions of Miniatures. Today we're going to be doing an incursion-sized battle report once more between my Necrons and Callum's Orks. Today's battle will be fought over a bombed-out Imperial ruin surrounded by forest, perhaps brought this way through an Ork bombardment which shook the heavens and the grounds alike, and beneath the earth something stirred in the quake. We're using the center point, or center ground, battle plan today, which involves 4 objectives, 2 to the north, 2 to the south. The 2 central most objectives in the north and south are going to be special objectives today. They are labelled A in the book and will be highlighted in red on the battlefield. These objectives relate to the center ground secondary objective that is specific to this particular battle plan. Today, we have 2 forces facing off against each other. We have my Necrons with 2 HQ choices. The Indomitus Overlord, who is the Warlord today. A Sautech Warlord with the Hyperlogical Strategist Warlord trait. A Cryptek. 5 Immortals, 5 Immortals, and 10 Immortals as my troop choices, all armed with Tesla carbines. Then, in the Elite section, we have a Triarch Stalker with a Heat Ray, 3 Scorpek Destroyers, 2 units of 5 Flayed Ones, and a unit of 5 Deathmarks. My objectives today are Taken Hold, the primary objective for the mission, as well as the mission-specific secondary objective, Center Ground. Furthermore, I have Domination to control more than half of the objectives on the battlefield, and Bring It Down to target and destroy vehicle models. This is going to be very strong for me this game, and you will see why as Callum introduces his army.
Well, today we've got a bit of a different army. As been sent down from the Armada is the cheeky Zoggers. We have a pretty much a Gretchen army for us. Our HQ choices are going to be the Big Mech and our Warlord, which is the Weird Boy, which I've given him the Inspiring Leader +1 to leadership characteristics to models around the Warlord, given him the Scorched Git Bones to give him the through Shiny Gubbins to give him the +1 to psychic tests, and I have given him a Warpath as his psychic ability to give an extra attack to 1 unit. We have 3 lots of 10 Gretchen to fill out the troops. We've got the Red Gobbo to bring the revolution. We have Grot tanks, 5 of them, which are kitted out with shooters and scorchers. We then have in heavy support some killer cans, again 5 of them, which I've given them a custom job, which will is the sparkly bits, which improves their ballistic skill from a 4+ to a 3+, and I've decided to load them with drillers and rocket launchers. And the last thing on the list is the mech guns. We have 4 of them, and each one is a smasher gun.
Fantastic. Introduce your objectives now.
Yeah. So the objectives I have chosen from the list of secondary we've got here is Slay the Warlord. I just want to kill your Warlord. I got Attrition as well, which is the 4 victory points if I can destroy more of your guys than you've destroyed of mine units. And I've also brought the other secondary objective for this specific battle. What's it called again? Center
Ground.
Center Ground, yeah. So that's the one I've also chosen.
Fantastic. So, without further ado, we'll hop on to our deployment, and we'll show you updates along the way, and at the end of that we'll show you complete deployment and hop into the first battle round. Let's go, Callum. Good luck.
Hey, good luck.
Deployment is finished, and Orks will take first turn. Orks have gone ahead and completed their first movement phase.
Okay, so I decided to bring the majority of them just forward. We've advanced only with the Grot tanks on the left-hand side and the Gretchen at the bottom right, just so they can get around the forest. And the Red Gobbo, he's been brought back to the safety of the forest.
We realised that Callum forgot to advance his Weirboy, so we advanced the Weirboy another 4 inches forwards, leaving him on the crater at the border of his deployment zone. In the Psychic phase, the Weirdboy manifested Smite, dealing 2 mortal wounds to the unit of Scorpec destroyers. And with that, Orcs' turn 1 shooting phase is over.
So, we started off with shooting with my killer cans. 3 rocket launchers could fire it into your Triarch, and one of them managed to get through. So we managed to do 3 damage through the rocket launchers, and then I had required 3 mech guns to then go and finish it off. And then you rolled the explosive roll, but it didn't explode, unfortunately. But the last mech gun I then used to try and take on your guys down south, and they managed to finish off one guy who was smited, and then they kill another.
With that, Orcs' turn 1 comes to a close as there are no charges, no fighting, and as far as morale is concerned, no morale checks need to be made. There are no combat attrition matters, and no coherency checks to be carried out. So with that, we move on to Necrons' turn 1. No reanimation protocols were successfully made, however 2 command points were spent on enhanced reanimation protocols. Not worth it, as it turns out. And Necrons are now on 4 command points at the end of their first command phase, moving into the movement phase. At the end of Necron's first movement phase, my Immortals have all moved up their maxed range. My Scorpec Destroyer has hurried forward, taken the objective, and he will start the action center ground from his position just hiding in place. I can currently control the 2 objectives, and we'll head now into my movement phase, as with Necrons I have no psychic phase. I should mention, my will be done from the Overlord has been placed on the unit of 10 Immortals. With that, we come to the end of my Necrons shooting phase. To summarise, all my units of Immortals opened fire into the Grot tanks, managing to slay 4 of them. My Overlord attempted to use his Tachyon arrow, however it was deflected by the Big Mech's force field, losing me that shot for the remainder of the game. Other than that, no further attacks have been made in the shooting phase.
Yeah.
With that, it is the end of the Necrons charge phase. My northern 2 units of Immortals attempted to charge the commander, all that remains of the Grot tanks. However, it was a 10-inch charge and both of them failed, one on Snake Eyes and the other on Double 4 for 8. With that, we have nothing to do in the fight phase, which then brings us through into the morale phase. The commander in the Grot tanks pays 2 command points for insane bravery to make sure it stays around to the start of Orcs' turn 2. At the end of Necron's turn 1, I will have gained 8 victory points through Bring It Down by killing 4 models that have the vehicle keyword. This is an endgame objective, and so will technically not be scored until the very end of the game, so if Callum has some means of restoring the Grot tanks back to life, that will detract from my victory points for now. But with that, we'll go into Orcs' turn 2. Furthermore, through attrition, Orcs destroyed 2 units, Necrons destroyed none. Orcs win 4 victory points for attrition. In the Orcs' turn 2 command phase, they have successfully managed to hold on to the primary objective, holding 2 objectives, granting them 10 victory points. They do not hold more than the Necrons, so they don't score those last 5. Furthermore, through center ground objective, the Grot tanks in the north secure 3 victory points by completing the center ground action. Well done them. And that marks the end of the Orcs movement phase.
So I've moved the middle with the Gretchen, with the Big Mech and the Weird Boy further up the field, just to try and get a few of them into shooting range. The Grot tank moves slightly away from the objective, just so he's close enough to get some scorching in. Hopefully do some damage this turn. And meanwhile, I've got the Gretchen that was in the very back. They've advanced towards that objective, though they can't quite take it because they've already used their action essentially to advance. Meanwhile, the Red Goblin is holding back with the mech guns. And down at the bottom, we've just moved our killer cans up with the Gretchen going into the building. That's my movement.
This then brings us to the end of Orks' turn 2 psychic phase.
So I've got the Weird Boy, and he's just channeling his inner psyche, and boom with the smite. Managed to get an 11 on the roll, and we d6 damage with that, drop that 3. Boom, there goes the last guy of that unit in the south.
And with that, Orks' shooting phase has come to a very painful end.
So we shall reward the dagger we had. And our mech guns, they shot the Immortals to the south, they shot the Immortals to the north, and they weakened them to like only 1 or 2 of them remaining. And the Grots tried to come in, but they couldn't quite finish them off, so needed the extra mech guns just to ensure that the ones in the south were killed. The commander, killed Grot tank. He unfortunately couldn't get his scorching range to get that final guy in the north, but he had a shooter, and it just managed to get through and finish off that squad. So there's 2 squads down, and then he had his flamer to try and weaken the squad in the middle.
That brings us to the end of Orks' turn 2, though they did attempt to charge with the Grot tanks on the Immortals. The Immortals fired Overwatch, and despite the help from My Will Be Done, they scored no wounds whatsoever. This brought us to the end of the turn. No units have to take morale checks, and no units need to take coherency checks, which means that the Orks' turn is concluded. They score no points, however, they have set themselves at having destroyed 3 units this turn for attrition. We'll go now into Necrons' turn 2. By Necrons' turn 2 command phase, the Immortals have recovered 3 of their dead comrades, and the Overlord has used My Will Be Done on them. We have gained 1 command point, putting us up at 2 command points remaining. At the end of Necrons' movement phase 2, the Immortals, Overlord and Cryptek have just moved up towards the northern central objective. The Flayed Ones have deep struck so that they are just in range of the top left, the northwest objective, and the southern central objective. And the Deathmarks have deep struck in so that 3 of them are in rapid fire range of the Weird Boy, and 2 are in rapid fire range of the Big Mech. This brings us to the end of Necrons' shooting phase 2. The Immortals opened up half and half into the Grot tanks and the Gretchen, slaying all bar 2 of the Gretchen thanks to the force field and some lucky rolls. And then we managed to bring the commander of the Grot tanks down to 1 wound. The Deathmarks opened up, splitting their fire between the Weird Boy and the Big Mech, causing 1 wound to each of the Weird Boy and the Big Mech, but also taking out 2 Grots through the Grot's shield stratagem. Now, we march into Necrons' charge phase. The Necrons' charge phase has been very successful. Somewhat. The Overlord started off by trying to charge the Grot tanks, however was caught by a flamer in Overwatch before failing his charge. The Flayed Ones in the south attempted to charge the Grots in the south, a 9-inch charge, and failed. I should note that a command point was spent on trying to get the Overlord to re-roll his charge. It failed on the same result, however, through Hyperlogical Strategist, the command point was recovered. Overall, a loss of 1 wound. Then, I think, on average, my Immortals should be able to cause just enough damage to make the Grot tank fail its saving throw and perish with its final wound. To make sure of this, the Cryptek has also come to join in. After all, nothing's more fun than kicking a good Grot. The end of Necron's second combat phase resulted in the Immortals successfully beating down on the Grot tank and slaying it. They then piled into the Gretchen, taking no wounds when the Gretchen fought back, and the Cryptek used his pile in and consolidate to get into the safety of the Immortals, all the time moving towards the closest foe, the Gretchen. This brings us to the end of turn 2, and awards the Orks victory points, based on the attrition, and awards Necrons victory points based on slaying another vehicle unit. This will then bring us into the start of turn 3. As you can see, the new points are up on the screen now. We forgot to mention morale. A single Gretchen has fled from the middle of the battlefield. However, the unit still remains, and so, well, it wouldn't have tipped the attrition in my favour anyway. On to Orks, turn 3, command phase. Orks' turn 2 command phase results in them gaining a command point, putting them up to 2. Also, controlling one objective down in the bottom right-hand corner, the southeast objective, nets them 5 points, placing Orks at 15 points from the primary objective, and then a further 11 points from their secondary objectives, putting them at a nice and healthy position of 26 points so far, against Necrons, who have only got 10 points, though we hope to see that improve over the next turn. With that, we come to the end of Orcs' movement, turn 3.
So, I've pulled my Gretchen back because they're just not really made for fighty. But my Big Mac, he wants a bit of action. And we then brought the Killer Cans coming up north because they want a bit of action too. And we've moved some of the Gretchen down south to the left to try and get one of the objectives, and we've left that one Gretchen by himself to go claim an objective in the south by himself, and he's hiding behind a wall just to be nice and protected.
With that, Orcs have had an explosive, perilous psychic phase.
So we've had our Psycho caster Smite, managed to get a double 6 to get Perils of the Warp, did 2 damage to himself, but only able to do 1 with the d6 roll onto the squad.
That's 1 damage to the squad of Immortals. Callum, cut out there for a moment. Let's go see that he's alright, and then we'll carry on with our charge phase. With that, the Orc turn 3 shooting phase is over, and as the shimmering form of the Overlord shifts back into this plane, his phase shifter working remarkably, we can survey the damage that was done.
Yeah, worked wonderfully for the fact that I shot 2 mech guns at him, and I think we managed to get like 4 or 5 going through, and he managed to save them all with that 4+. Unfortunately, he can get those d6 damages through. But regardless, we managed to destroy 3 flayed ones using mech guns. We were able to take out a couple of death marks, and we killed 1. Well, that's through the smite, wasn't it? One of the. So there's quite a few guys killed, so we'll take it.
The Orc charge phase was hailed by Tesla fire. What's the damage, Callum?
With 5 rolls, had to make 3+. Only one of them succeeded. So one of my killer cans is down to 1 health. And then they failed the roll. They're 6-inch roll with 3. So it wasn't good. But the Big Mac, he's in. So at least someone's getting his attacks off.
Into the fight phase. In a truly tragic show of events, the Big Mech ran in and displayed that really he was too thinky to be an Orc, as he only managed to slay 1 Immortal before he was beat to death by Immortals with their basic close combat weapons. And with that, Orc's turn 3 comes to an end. No units were destroyed this turn, and so he will not score attrition, which means that as we come into Necron's turn 3, let's make some reanimation protocols. 2 Immortals rejoin the unit. A Deathmark is reanimated, as well as a flayed one. The Overlord regains his lost wound, putting him back at full wounds. Then, we control 2 objectives, That is 10 points for the primary objective, placing Necrons on 20 points to Orks on 26. A close game so far. We'll head into the movement phase. My Will Be Done is used by the Overlord onto the Immortals, keeping them firing at optimal efficiency. The Flayed Ones in the northwest move up just to make sure that they are still holding that objective and staying in cover. The Flayed Ones in the south march forwards towards the Gretchen. A bloodbath is to be had. The Deathmarks move north, keeping the Weird Boy in rapid-fire range. Meanwhile, the Immortals fan out a little bit, and staying close with the Overlord and the Cryptek, expecting a charge from the Killer Cans. Let it be noted as well, if I didn't mention, I think I didn't, that the Cryptek is taking the action center ground. The end of Necron's shooting phase sees the Weird Boy, a smoking husk in a crater, and one more of the Killer Cans, baby Death Dreads. The Killer Cans reduced to ash. This luckily means that, well, I get some more victory points. Can't say no to that. Now, let us hurry ahead into the charge phase. Very little to declare for the charge phase. The Flayed Ones make it easily into the Gretchen, and will begin a brutal combat. At the end of Necron's combat phase number 3, the Flayed Ones managed to slay 4 Gretchen. A little underwhelming, personally. However, this has not managed to shift them from the southern objective, meaning that Necrons only hold now 2 objectives, not the 3 that they needed for domination. And with this, Orks' turn 4 movement phase is complete. Talk us through it, Callum.
So, I've disengaged the Gretchen in the south, so that the Flayed Ones are now in shooting range of the Med Guns, and one of the Gretchen just clipping that point by 3 inches. We then have moved the Killer Cans up north to try and deal with the threat of the Immortals. Hopefully they can deal with that. And we've moved the Gretchen in a way to kind of move them to just shoot a bit more at that God of Immortals, but that's pretty much it.
We no longer have a psychic phase for Orks, and so we shall continue into Orks' shooting phase, turn 4. The shooting phase was a cruel mistress, but to who? What do you think, Callum?
Well, I think I'm pretty happy. We killed off the Flayed Ones down south. There only 1 death mark remains. I'm happy with that. And we've weakened a few of your Immortals. And the Cryptek got blasted by the Red Gobbo.
Speaking of, shall we find out if the Cryptek reanimates?
Go on.
On a 4-up, he returns. Thus far, this edition, I have made probably 10 Resurrection Protocol rolls, and not passed a single one. At least in the previous edition, I could use a command point reroll to increase it from 50% chance to 75%.
Every time I've played you in the last edition, you always brought someone back.
It would, yeah, and it would always be a case of me using like 2 command points.
Yeah,
just to prove how like BS it is. Look at that. If I could reroll it, it would have worked.
Yeah, that's I do think that
just a little bit of salt from us here.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
4 Immortals dead, 2 death marks, 3 Flayed Ones, and a Cryptek. It's been a nasty little turn for the Necrons in the Orc shooting. Could have been worse, however, and now we move into the Orcs charge phase. The Killer Cans advance across the field, taking no damage under the hail of Gauss fire fired in Overwatch. The Overlord strides boldly. At the end of the Orcs fight phase, they have been unable to kill more than a single Immortal. However, the Overlord's attacks have been ineffective as well. Only an Immortal managed to put a single dent onto the Killer Cans. At the end of Orcs turn 4, they have wiped out 1 unit for attrition. By the end of the Necron's 4th command phase, we have gained another 10 victory points for holding 2 objectives and taken hold. 2 Immortals have returned to the battlefield and 1 death mark. And as we go into the Necron's turn 4 movement phase, let me say, there is a surprise in store. At the end of the Necron's movement phase, the Overlord uses his relic, the Veil of Darkness, and transports himself and his immortals' way to a safer distance from those killer cans. Will he be able to make much of a difference from here? I hope so. At the end of the shooting phase, the immortals have managed to fire down and knock out one of the, killer cans, and the Deathmarks have managed to shoot down 2 of the Gretchen. One of the killer cans did take a wound as well from the Deathmarks. No, not Deathmarks, the Immortals. Now we're going to lead into the charge phase. My Overlord shall make a charge against the Gretchen. The individual lone Gretchen holding the objective. It's a 9-inch charge, let's hope he can do it. At the end of the Necrons' turn 4, the charge was failed, and now we head into the final turn of the game. Orks are in the lead, and they will remain in the lead, seeing as they presently control 3 objectives. That's an additional 15 points for them at the start of their turn, and they have secured attrition. This puts Orks very far in the lead, and it really is a question as to whether or not Necrons can catch up. Orks Movement Phase 5 has come to a conclusion.
I've got the Gretchen in the north taking that objective, the Gretchen to the south taking the other objective where the death marks are, kept the other Gretchen on the one Gretchen by himself on the wall, just trying to keep hold of that objective if he can. I've moved 2 of the mech guns a bit forward just so they can get in range of the Overlord and try and shoot at them. And the other 2 mech guns are staying just so they can shoot at the death marks. And I've moved the killer cans towards that group down in the south just so I can try shooting them with some rocket launchers.
And with that we come to the end of Orks' turn 5. There are no charges to be made. In the shooting phase, the death marks were gunned down. We forgot to mention in the movement phase that the Gretchen in the north and the Gretchen in the south on the central objectives are both taking the center ground action. This means that should both units survive, 10 victory points will be reaped for the Orks. Necrons, I don't believe we can win, so let's just make sure that the Orks don't win by a landslide. We'll jump quickly into the Necron turn, and we'll see where we end up. The command phase nets my Necrons a meager 5 victory points from the top left objective. In the movement phase, the flayed ones march forwards, the Immortals march up, and the Overlord towards the Gretchen. The shooting phase now will involve my Immortals gunning down at the north Gretchen, hoping to eradicate as many of them as possible. And then we'll be into the charge phase. Let's see how many die. Well, my Immortals have done me proud. The whole squad of Gretchen gunned down like the insignificant wretches on this divine world of the Necrons. The Overlord successfully charges in, but will he slay the lowly Gretchen? That marks the end of Necron's turn 5. The Gretchen was slain. This results in Orks not scoring the points for attrition, leaving the final score at 55 to 39. There's a small gulf in there, especially since, Necrons weren't able to score either of Dominion or Domination. I'm not sure which one it is off the top of my head. Actually, is it Dominion or Domination?
I'm looking it up now. It is Dominion.
Yes. Necrons weren't able to score Dominion at all, nor were they able to score, center ground. Not for lack of trying, however. Both people who attempted it were not even fought to death by the Orks. They were shot dead by the Orks, which is an interesting concept. Regardless, we have managed to hold on to the objective in the northwest. All in all, this has been a particularly interesting game. And tomorrow, we shall hope to record a sort of reflections on this game and really sort of come up with the ideas of what we think went wrong, what we think went well. And then after that, we'll hope to record a video. Now that we've played, how many games of 9th edition have we played now, Callum? Played these 2, maybe one before it. I've then played one with Georgie. I played 2 with Georgie, actually. We probably played in the region of between us 10, maybe 12 games of 40k in 9th edition.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Match to play. So we'll give our opinions on 9th edition match to play. But with that, thank you for watching, everyone. Please, hit like, hit subscribe if you have not already. It really helps us out. And tell us, have you enjoyed this last 35 minutes? Thank you for watching. It's bye from me.
And it's bye from me.